Good morning. Today on Spotlight, Michigan's growing cannabis business and the legal ramifications that seem to go with it. What's next for this industry in this state? My guest, attorney Barton Morris, an expert in cannabis law. And later, getting ready for the 2019 Small Business Workshop. Mark Lee will join me. It's Sunday, April the 14th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. It's been about 4 months since Michigan, the voters, passed recreational marijuana in this state. And we'll talk about both the medical side as well as the recreational side. Give me an assessment of where you think we are right now. Well, I think we're just getting used to it. People are now beginning to understand that they actually don't have to worry about being arrested. They can be adults can be in possession of small amounts of marijuana and use cannabis. But we're not there yet. We have a long way to go before we begin to develop the commercial industry that has to happen in order to really get rid of the black market. So there still is a black market. There still is a lot of activity that's going on that needs to be eliminated. Still a lot of legal hurdles out there as the state tries to get its arms around this new industry. And interpretation. New industry for us. If you may recall the Medical Marijuana Act that passed in 2008. It took years for our courts to truly interpret what its meaning is. And so that's going to be necessary as well. For the Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act, it's going to take some time for law enforcement, for lawyers like myself, and for the courts to really interpret exactly how it's going to manifest itself in the marketplace. Potentially there's a lot of money for the state. We know that the business is growing by leaps and bounds. But do you think that it's going to be as much for this state as originally was predicted now that other states around us are also looking at legalizing this? Well, you know, the federal government still it's still illegal in the federal government. Therefore, only what we can do within this state, it happens within this state. It doesn't matter what happens in other states. And the fact of the matter is that we have enough people within this state to really do well in this industry. There's a lot of cannabis users in this state, and we have a pretty sizable population of about 10 million people. That's the second largest state behind California to legalize recreational marijuana, and that's why, and the first in the Midwest, and that's why there's a lot of excitement about what's going to be happening in this state. There's been a lot of recent activity over the fact that we have some unlicensed dispensaries. We thought that that was going to get resolved the other day in Lansing. It did not get resolved. What are you hearing is the latest update in terms of where we are and what the next deadline may be? There's a bill introduced recently that I hear is being fast-tracked that would create a deadline of June 1st. So perhaps another 6 weeks or so. Now there's a court hearing, there's been some litigation, and you know, this deadline has been moving back since last October. So you know, we don't really know exactly when this is going to stop, but I know that there's some people in the legislature and those that are in the industry that have spent a lot of money to get licensed, and they're competing with those that are not licensed. There's growing, so the more people that get licensed, there's more people that are really wanting the industry in the manner in which it's supposed to operate to take shape and not allow the unlicensed caregiver system to continue to influence it. And on the unlicensed side, that's right now affecting about 30 different dispensaries, somewhere in that neighborhood? Yeah, approximately. Give or take. Okay. What's your best guess of what will happen on June 1st? I think that enough is going to be enough. I think that our legislature, the regulators, the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, they have wanted to stop unlicensed operations of dispensaries back last October. But the fact of the matter is we do have a lot of patients in this state that need to continue to get their medicine. And the number of facilities that have been licensed thus far, there's only been 50-some growers licensed thus far and about 150 dispensaries. That's not enough. There's not enough growers. There's not enough in the system in order to be able to provide medicine to those patients. And so at some point there's got to be a line drawn, and I think that is going to be June 1st.
Okay, we need to take a little break. We'll come right back with some more questions to Attorney Barton Morris. We hope you stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. Attorney, do you agree with the action that Governor Whitmer took when she first came into office and she abolished the Michigan Marijuana Licensing Board and replaced it with a board that she feels regulates the industry better?
Well, there's no doubt that that licensing board was a politically appointed board, and unfortunately it was slowing the number of licenses that were being approved. And so that's why we're in the situation we're in right now. At least that's what's generally thought.
Is it getting faster?
We don't know yet. The board is still meeting this month. This is the last month they're going to meet, but it's definitely going to get faster because the Bureau of Marijuana Regulation, headed by Andrew Brisboe, they have an order through the governor is to get this going faster, get these licenses processed faster, and he knows what he's doing. He knows what his job is going to be, and I'm certain that that's going to happen.
Yeah. What's the biggest complaint that you hear from your clients?
Is the difficulty in providing all the information necessary for the application. It's a very comprehensive.
Which I hear is, some would say grueling, some say thorough. I don't know what your word would be for
it. We call it comprehensive.
Comprehensive, okay.
And we have a lot of clients that are not pleased with the amount of information that they have to provide. A lot of financial information, financial records, not only from themselves, but from any businesses that they operate or control. See, in the marijuana regulation, they want to know as much as they can in order to make a determination as to whether somebody has good moral character. And in order to do that, they try to get as much information as they can. So it's the most comprehensive in the state. So you think it's a fair
process, though? You don't have problems with the amount of information that they have in order to protect the state and protect the citizens?
No, I do have a problem. I mean, I think that this is what's normal. Marijuana this is a new thing for everybody. So I understand that there's a lot of concern in order to make sure that there's not bad actors going into the market. But there's other states, Oklahoma in particular, it is very easy to get a license in Oklahoma, and they're not seeing any problems. So I would like to see, and I think this is going to happen in the future, a relaxation of the requirements necessary to obtain a license. But as of right now, the requirements are rigorous, and that's what's necessary to get a license.
Okay. One thing I keep hearing, and I want to know your assessment of it, in terms of the THC, and we're hearing stuff now in terms of traffic violations and blood testing and what should be the norm and what kind of guidance should we give law enforcement officers.
There was an impaired driving commission in Michigan that just recently released a report that I found to be accurate, which is it's very difficult, in fact impossible, to determine somebody's level of impairment based only upon the concentration of THC within their body. They issued recommendations, which I agree with, which is officers need to be trained in order to observe whether somebody's driving under the influence of marijuana. And there are certain things that they can look for, driving behaviors and results on sort of specific field sobriety testing. Officers can and will be and have been trained on drug-impaired driving. That needs to continue and to potentially increase.
The state, the voters, passed recreational marijuana back in November, but there are a number of municipalities that have said, just because the state passed it doesn't mean we necessarily have to go with it, and they've tried to opt out of it. Last count I think I saw was something like 300 cities, municipalities. Any idea what the number is up to now? And doesn't that complicate the overall procedure, especially for people who want to be able to use this, trying to know, okay, if I go to Royal Oak, I'm okay, but if I go to West Bloomfield, I may not be okay.
So when a city opts out, they're only opting out from their desire to have a commercial facility within their city. So if a city doesn't want a dispensary, either medical or recreational, they can opt out of that. But they can't opt out of the recreational use and possession of marijuana, nor can they opt out from a caregiver growing a number of plants for their patients, nor can they opt out from any adult being able to grow up to 12 plants in their residence. So it's true, there's about 114 cities that have opted in. out of 1,700 municipalities that we have in this state. And any ones that have opted out, they can change their mind later. Many have opted out simply for fear of perhaps by default opting in. So there's many cities that are just thinking about it, and that's normal. After many years have gone by, that's when we're going to find the number of cities that are truly on board and have made their intentions known with respect to the types of facilities they would like within their city.
Okay, need to sneak another little break in here. We'll come right back. We'll talk about some of the conflict between federal and state and where the 10th Amendment comes into that. And this whole thing that we keep hearing a lot about, you can't buy it, but you can gift it, and make sure people understand that. We'll be right back. We hope you stay with us. Okay, so we know that we're having some conflicts on the legal end between federal law, where it's still considered illegal, states like Michigan, which say it's okay now, but the money, which banks you can take it to, which banks you can't, if it's not a state-owned bank versus one that has federal regulations. Bring us up to speed on all this, and where do you think this is going? And we know that there's legislation that's been introduced in Washington.
The Safe Banking Act is historic federal bill and legislation that was introduced into the House recently and then has gotten through its committee, the Financial Services Committee, and now is going to be the first positive cannabis reform bill to be voted and likely to be passed, because this is the biggest problem.
Bipartisan legislation.
It is. And it is the biggest problem federally with respect to our industry, which is the lack of traditional financial banking services that the industry does not have right now. And so our legislature, our Congress is doing something about that. And I'm very, very hopeful that that's going to pass very soon. And then we just reintroduced, or Congress just reintroduced the States Act, which I think is also very likely to get some favorable treatment within a committee and perhaps get to a floor for a vote. And become law. And it basically says that every state has the right to do what they're doing now. Michigan has the right, and what we've done is legalize recreational adult use marijuana and medical marijuana.
And that's where it gets into the 10th Amendment there.
Right, and the 10th Amendment says that as long as we're not interfering with any other states, we're not interfering with interstate commerce, then we have the right to do with what we want within our state. And as long as we're not interfering, we're not trafficking marijuana or anything out to other states like Ohio or Wisconsin, we get to, the States Rights Act gives us that right to continue to do that, and that will allow for some better banking scenarios to open up, and also tax issues that are holding the industry back as well.
Is it your experience that this is also creating complications right now for employers who have employees who may want to partake in this, whether it's on the medical side or it's on the recreational side, but their company laws say, hey, we may be a company that has offices in multiple number of states, so we're recognizing what the federal government says about this, not what the state of Michigan has just recently passed.
The Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act was very specific about leaving intact an employer's ability to enact whatever rules are necessary for them. They can still prohibit the use of marijuana regardless of the fact that it's legal in the state, and that's not going to change, and perhaps that's the way it should be. Some employers, that's not appropriate for their employees to use. Others, it may be. So, you know, in Canada, there's police agencies, their main police agency had said, we're going to allow off-duty use of marijuana, or the county mounties. Same thing happened in Vancouver. So every employer should have the ability to make that determination.
All right. Just recently, this past week, we saw that the Bay Mills tribe up north has said recreational marijuana is now legal for, I believe, people 21 and over on the reservation. What does that do in terms of all this, and what do you read into this?
This is just another representation of the fact that it's spreading. The fact that there should be a decriminalization of marijuana. People shouldn't be arrested for marijuana on the reservation in the state of Michigan, and so they had to keep in step with what our state is doing and what the opinion is nationally. that's what's happening. I think a majority of people and individuals in this country believe that recreational marijuana for adults should be legal, at least to decriminalize it. I don't think anybody agrees with putting people in jail for being in possession of small amounts of marijuana in a nonviolent fashion.
Let me back up a little bit. The people probably looking at this interview and say, how did this young attorney get into this particular practice? How did you get into this? And it's obviously going well from a business point of view.
Thank you. I started 20 years ago in criminal defense, representing people prosecuted for marijuana possession, driving under the influence of alcohol, all types of criminal offenses. And so when we had medical marijuana in 2008, that's a criminal defensive statute. And so I then began to specialize in representing individuals that were charged with marijuana offenses, medical marijuana, using a medical marijuana defense. Over time, in Michigan, we didn't have a commercialized system for licensing and regulation of commercial marijuana like dispensaries. And so over time, there became a need for that. That happens in every state that has legalized marijuana. You have to have a safe and regulated manner in order to get it, to ensure that the marijuana is tested, and so that people are going into a store, they know that everything is going to be safe. And so as our industry progressed into the necessity of that type of system, so did my practice. And here we are today. I formed the Cannabis Legal Group about 3 years ago, and we service those that are seeking to get licensed to provide the industry commercial services for the cultivation, processing, and retail sale of cannabis.
Final question, whether it's the medical side of marijuana or it's the recreational side, what worries you about this industry in Michigan now and where it may be going if we aren't careful?
That's a good question. So I fear that there's not going to be enough diversity in the industry right now. It takes a lot of money to be able to get a license. And what the prohibition of cannabis has done historically in this country is oppress minorities and disproportionately put them in a situation where they're going to jail or be convicted of offenses that are those convictions are still remaining, and thus far Michigan hasn't done anything to remove those convictions, and so they're precluded from getting into industry because of those comprehensive rigorous standards that are being imposed by the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. And so if we don't do something about ensuring social equity and ensuring the diversity of the industry, then it's going to grow into something that's going to be very difficult to integrate later. There's going to be just businesses with a lot of money that are controlling the industry, and it's not going to be representative of our country.
And very quickly, and just to be clear, when you say diversity, you're talking about people of color, you're talking about women, you're talking about groups that we normally have called minorities, maybe not getting into a business in which there's going to be a majority of money.
That's right. That's exactly right. And not just people of color, but women, of course. They're people that have been disadvantaged in the past, and geographical locations and areas that have been disadvantaged and disproportionately affected by the prohibition of cannabis. It's going to be much more difficult for them to get into the market, and if that doesn't happen, if we don't do something about that, they're going to be excluded from it.
All right, Attorney Barton Morris, thank you so much for coming in, sharing all this information. We'll get you back, because obviously there's a lot of stuff in here that needs to be resolved, and we'll just watch it as it works its way through the state of Michigan.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And when we come back, I'll head to our downtown studio at the Cube, and we'll talk about small business and the small business campaign that will be coming up in just a couple weeks. We hope you stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. We're down here at the Cube now, and joining me is Marcus Lee. He is founder of the Lee Group. He also has a show on WXYZ-TV radio every Sunday, Small Talk with Marcus Lee, and he has a relatively new show in the conference room on 910 AM radio. Welcome back to Spotlight.
Thanks, Jeff, for having me. I appreciate it.
It's good here and good having you. you have the 5th year coming up of your small business workshop. You've been here before to talk about it. That's an important topic, even now more than ever before, because of all that's going on in our city and the metropolitan area. But where is it this year? And give us the highlights.
This year it's going to be held on May 7th at 440 Borough Street, which is in Techtown, Detroit, in Midtown Detroit.
Okay.
And the highlights, the key theme this year will be navigating the headwinds of change. And
a lot of that going on.
Well, one of the reasons that we chose that topic in our 5th year is while the economy is fairly strong right now, there's some inklings out there that the economy might be slowing down.
We keep hearing that, we've been on this wave for quite a little while, but things may change.
There's speculation, and I do want to say the workshop is being presented by Fifth Third Bank. I want to make sure they're our sponsor. But the headwinds have changed, and there's been some speculation the economy is going to slow down, probably in the 4th quarter, maybe going into 2020. So the theme is really addressing that issue. As a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, are you ready for that potential headwind of change on the horizon? Is your business ready to adapt to whatever lies ahead of you? You've got a lineup of speakers to be able to talk about it from different points of view. Who are some of the key people coming in? Oh, I'm so pleased to announce we have Tommy Walker Jr., young man who founded the Detroit versus Everybody brand. It's now going global, as we all know.
See the T-shirts everywhere.
You see the T-shirts everywhere. We have Tanya Allen. She's with Forever Fresh. And she also owns several restaurants out at Metro Airport. We have Ray Waters, who's the president of Detroit Development Fund.
Ray's a great guy,
Dr. Joyce Suber,
and he has helped so many people. I mean, he's probably the most unselfish person that I know in terms of small business. He loves just seeing people achieve their dreams, and he likes staying sort of behind the scenes, but he coaches you, he introduces you to the right people. I've had more people come up and I say, how'd you get your start? And they say, Ray Waters.
Yeah, he's a very unassuming guy.
Yeah.
And to your point, he works behind the scenes. But without his support in this city, a lot of these businesses would not have gotten their startup. He's come to them with advice and counsel and resources to help them start a business.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you hope people get out of this?
I want people to come down and get the knowledge that they need, the resources that they need to help them to navigate those potential obstacles. One of the things about the beauty of the workshop is that people do come down and they get a chance to network, they get advice and counsel. But the bottom line is we want them to leave with some practical advice, practical plans, so they can literally walk away on that day, May 7th, on a Tuesday, with some action plans that they can implement almost immediately.
Mark, if people want to get more information, I assume there's a website they can go to?
They can go to leadgroupinnovation.com. That's leadgroupinnovation.com, and they can click on the Small Business Workshop tab.
All right, very good. And you'll stick around. We want to do a little special thing for the web.
Absolutely.
All right. You can click over to WXYZ.com, catch the rest of our conversation. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the spotlight from theCUBE. Have a great week.